survivors. And although it was appropriate shortly after the war in the late 40s and the 50s to refer to them that way, there were some that, although they survived that terrible nightmare, many years later had no longer survived. Unfortunately, in spite of making it through traumas beyond anything we can fathom, they came to America, and some of them got lost in America. And while they made it through the nightmare, they got lost in the American dream. Charna Pastor Moshe Alexander was initially a survivor. But when we look back at what she did over the next 60, 70 years, she also should not just be referred to as a survivor. She thrived. She was a thriver. She's somebody that came to, first they moved to Eretz Yisrael, and then they came to America. And it wasn't that easy. Initially they came through Canada. They had to be in Canada for a while Mr. Blech came to America. And then she came to America, she came to Cleveland, didn't have much family here. Had a brother, didn't have much of a support system to remain an Erlich Yid. But she and her husband thrived. They didn't just survive. They built beautiful ders. They built a beautiful home. This past Shabbos, one of the speakers at the Aguda convention said a thought that I'd like to share with you. And yesterday, when speaking to Maury, he mentioned something that really signaled that it would be apropos. He said that when his parents went to Eretz Yisrael in the late 40s, when the winds were going in many different directions, his parents made a decision that they are going with Aguda. And they said they want to maintain the same type of Yiddishkeit that they had in Spring before the war. That's the type of Yiddishkeit they want to maintain afterwards. And it's hard for us to appreciate what type of awesome task that was. It was a world where many were ridiculed for that, and many were thought to be giving everything up if they pursued such a life. But they remained steadfast, and that's why they were zeicha to do what they did. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yaakov Avinu as he's about to go into Golus and go to Mitzrayim. He says, don't be afraid. I will go down with you and I will bring you up. He says part of what Yaakov Avinu was afraid of, he knew that he had to go to Golus. But to go to Mitzrayim, to go to the environment of Mitzrayim, to go to that social atmosphere that Mitzrayim represented, what's going to be? How can we build a Klal Yisrael through that? And HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, it's dafka in a Mitzrayim that you are going to be able to do that. Going into Mitzrayim and remaining strong, remaining steadfast, and over there being persecuted sometimes, or recognizing that you had to withstand certain pressures, that is what will make Klal Yisrael a strong Klal Yisrael. Ashinu as Hashanam, all that Klal Yisrael retained was only so precious because of the environment and the place in which they were. You look at different snippets of Charna Bas Ramesh Alexander's life. And I think if we would have been living in the moment, we would have sized it up one way. But now when we look at the tapestry of her life, we see it so differently. She grew up as a child in a very comfortable life setting. Her father was a successful businessman. He was a tremendous Baal Chesed. And then suddenly, when she was 8 or 9 years old, some crazy story with a horse, he died. She's left a Yisema. She's left an orphan at that age. And then, not many years later, begin the Milchama. She's going into a Mitzrayim. She's going into a world like, how could anything good come out of this world? But ultimately, we see years later, the Nazis, Yimach Shemam V'Zichram, and she, that small, smiling lady, came through all of it in shining colors. Raised children, Mori, Rochelle, Israela, all Shemrei Torah mitzvahs. Has grandchildren and great-grandchildren that are committed to the same Torah and the same Eibishter as her parents and grandparents in Spink. This is not a survivor. This is somebody that thrived and thrived beautifully. Eibishter should give you all a nechama. Amen. Now going to call on her son-in-law, Stephen Perlich, to say some divrei hesped.
We weren't supposed to be here today. Came as a shock, even though she has not been well for the last few months, but still came as a shock. And on behalf of the family, Mishpach, my wife, my sister-in-law, I'm going to say a few words. It's impossible to encapsulate in a few minutes the life of anyone, let alone Charna Bas Moshe Alexander, Mom, Babi Shari, Babi. So I will not attempt to do so, nor do I plan to take longer than a few minutes. I want to thank everybody for coming. It's a cold, wintry day, or a typical day in Cleveland, perhaps, but for New Yorkers, it's still a cold day, very cold day. But our hearts are warm with the memories of Charna, Babi, and Mom. I want to thank also numerous caregivers that helped her out, the physicians. There's Tanya, there's Margaret, and a whole slew of others. And there's some people who couldn't be here today. One of the people who helped care for her was a future doctor in the family, Shana Newman, who wanted to be here but couldn't be here because trying to get into residency and 3 program interviews this week. Impossible, though she wanted to be here. We have my daughter and her grandson, her husband Evan, Novin Chashmonaim, who wanted to be here, of course, couldn't be here, and the daughters-in-law Tzivi and Rachel, who really want to be here, but circumstance prevented it. Baruch Hashem for those circumstances. Especially Yeshua goes to wife Israela, my sister-in-law Rochelle, Maury and Leah, and the rest of the family for all their efforts on behalf of Mom, treating her with a Kavadik way. Lessons are learned, books can be written about the way they were treated, everything they did for her in New York and in Cleveland. I've been very fortunate to have wonderful in-laws who treated me like a son. Mom lived at a time, as Rabbi Charlak mentioned, that would be an important component of her life, but it was not a time that negatively defined her life. As a child, as Rav Charlak mentioned, she lost her father in a very unfortunate incident, but he was very well respected in the community by both the Yidden and the non-Jews as well. They all had very high respect for Moshe Alexander, who was known as a Gibor and Ish Yashar for all. And at an early age, she was involved in helping support the family and working in the family store, a trait that she brought here, working in a store right down the block over here for many, many years. As we know, Mom made it through a Shoah. She made it through the initial horrendous selection lines. When a friend shouted out of her to let go of her brother's hand, little Ancho, which was a very difficult thing to know, but a split-second decision. Had she not let go, none of us would be here today. She would have been chosen to the wrong side of the line in this election process. But fortunately, the decision was made. Unfortunately, the family was lost, but she survived with her brother and made it through. After the Shoah, we all know she married my father-in-law, Shomar Ben Yisrael, and moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he fought in the Milchemet HaShichrur, 56 war, before eventually moving to Cleveland through Canada. Despite all the horrors they witnessed, she maintained an emunah bitachon b'Hashem, instilling these important Torah values in their children, grandchildren, and of course the great-grandchildren that she got to see. Babi Shari, Mom's daily routine included saying Perek Shira and several Kapitelach Tehillim on a daily basis. This isn't easy. It's a difficult discipline for one to maintain and continue this pace, and I'm not sure how anybody does it, how she was able to do it, but Baruch Hashem, she was doing it. She may not be here with us now, but the zechusim that she must have had from those tefillos must have a benefit for the mishpacha, just looking at the family that have descended from her, and Bez Hashem will descend. Mom was a strong advocate on behalf of her children. If situation required her, whether to come across the street from the bakery or to come from the heights where they were living at the time to go to the academy to report, to see various issues, she was there and there at a drop of a hat to support the family, to support the children, and whatever issues were being addressed. And Baruch Hashem, everybody was successful. As I dropped off Israel at the airport yesterday morning, she happened to mention to me that Mom considered me like a son. And I wished I could have reciprocated a little bit more in showing how much I appreciated Mom, but I certainly did for everything you did for us. When she mentioned a Dvar Torah I read on Friday, it became clear to me on another level. Rabbi Mordechai Kamenetsky Shlita, in his weekly, it's a fax homily he sends out, a weekly Dvar Torah on the Parsha, addressed the question raised by numerous Gedolim. Why did Yosef, after discussing identity, ask his brothers, Ha'od Avichai, instead of asking Od Avinu Chai? Rabbi Kamenetsky tied the tshuva to a maaseh he heard from my Rav, Rav Moshe Weinberger. Rav Moshe Weinberger had recently related to Rav Kamenetsky the story about the Baba Sali, who was sitting with his chila when a man approached the Baba Sali, explained the various terrors his family was having, and he asked the Baba Sali to mispal on behalf of him and his family. At that moment, the Baba Sali's son-in-law entered the room, and immediately the Baba Sali started yelling at the son-in-law something to the effect, "How dare you enter the room unannounced?" Repeating it a second time, "How dare you enter the room unannounced?" And of course, the son-in-law, everybody was in shock. It wasn't the first time he entered the room. To which the Baba Sali quickly answered and told his son-in-law, "Repeat after me. A son-in-law is like a son and does not need to be announced." And told him to say it again louder and louder. The Baba Sali then proceeds to daven on behalf of the man, saying, "Hashem, we are all your sons. We come and we can speak to you as if we are sons at any time without any moment's notice." Like we say, Avinu Malkeinu on the Yom Tovim and the fast days, we beseech Hashem as B'nai Hashem, we can approach Hashem. Yosef was asking his brothers, am I still welcome my father's help? Am I still alive to him as a son? Babi Shari, Mom has returned her pure neshama to Beis Hashem. She is no doubt... It's no doubt that Mom is welcome, Beis Hashem, should be treated like a daughter, and we hopefully, of course, hope that she'll continue to be a Melis Yosher for the Klal Yisrael, for the family, until we are Zocher to be united with the Gula Shulaima Amitis B'Merav Yameinu Amen.
Before I begin, my uncle already thanked all those that helped. In particular, I wanted to point out, that the past 13, 15 years, my grandparents came to our house every single Shabbos. After my grandfather was nifter, my grandmother came by herself. And it's one thing for my father, but it's another thing for my mother as a daughter-in-law. You wouldn't tell, I cannot tell, besides the fact that I knew that my mother was a daughter-in-law, not a daughter. You wouldn't be able to tell. She treated her mamish like a mother. It's known in our house that since we were very little, it was not my father, it was my mother, that every single Erev Shabbos we had to call up my grandparents to say good Shabbos. And it's a minhag we still do to this very day. Even the grandchildren, sometimes even the great-grandchildren get on the phone. And, I was calling my mother the past few weeks. My grandmother wasn't well. She was playing Rummy Cube. She was there. You could not tell the difference between her and a regular daughter. And it's something that it does not go unnoticed. The family does notice, and it's a chinuch for the whole entire family. It was mentioned many times that my grandmother was a survivor. So I asked her one time for the secret. And the secret I want to tell you that she told me is a lesson we could all take, a lesson that I personally have taken. And that, I was asking her about my grandfather. That I know in Spinka, my great-great-grandfather was the Gabbai, the Spinka Rebbe. He was a Mechaber Sfarim. He was besides very religious, he was also a very Hasidic Yid. My grandfather, he was Shemer Torah Mitzvahs. He was not as Hasidic. So I asked her, when was a loss? What was my great-grandfather? She told me my great-grandfather was also Hasidic, very Hasidic. And after the war, my grandfather lost it. And then when he met my grandmother, she said, we were going to get married. She said, we have to build the house on Torah Mitzvahs. So I asked her, what gave her the power? She said when they were being liberated, and they had many different groups they could have gone to. There's a lot of different options. So when a Gouda came up, she said she picked a Gouda. She said, why? Because she knew that's what her father would have wanted from her. Her father was nifter when she was 8 or 9 years old. I said, but the image of her father was always there. She knew that's what her father wanted, and that's the way she followed. We have a similar message, with Yosef Atzadik. He was in Mitzrayim. He was away from his father for many years. He left as a teenager, and he was about to do the Avera, and then the image of his father came, and it stopped him. He said, as parents, as Rabbanim, as everybody, we are influences on everybody else. I said, as a father, I've always taken it. I said, how are my kids going to look at me? Not when I'm here. Even later on in their life, are they going to say, is this what my father wanted? I said, I hope I become that person that my grandmother was looked up to, and take the lesson that I should be that person that they should want to look up to. Should be a Miller Seisher.
My grandparents, growing up together with them, had a very, very strong and very, very deep connection to each other. As growing up, my grandfather, whenever there was a yard site and they would give out danishes or buy kiddush and cake, he would always cut it in half, put half of it into a napkin and put it into his pocket for my grandmother. They were a true lesson for Shalom Bayis that we all learned from. One thing that they both had that was, I would say, stuck out more than most things is my grandfather was a Oyev Shalom and Roidev Shalom. He was a Gabbai for many years, and through his Gabbois, he instead of waiting for people to come to him for an Aliyah for yard site, he would always go and try to find out whose yard site, who always was, in order he should give it to them. He was always a Oyev Shalom, Roidev Shalom. My grandmother, she was always such a happy person and always very, very personal. She was a very friendly person. My father told me that a few times they were going to invite guests, but they felt the guests were a little bit quiet, and they were a little bit quiet. They didn't want to. But as was mentioned before, my grandmother used to be by the table. She used to come every Shabbos. And he said, don't worry, Bobby, she knows that. She's so friendly. She'll always be able to start a conversation. She's always so caring with other people. She'll be able to do it. My brother said, I asked also my grandmother one time, she was telling me that when they were being liberated, so she told me many of her friends didn't stay after the whole Holocaust. They didn't stay from. They went off the derech, and she chose to be to the most Shem Torah mitzvahs, to the Aguda. And I also asked her why, and she told me because that's what Zaidi and I both knew that's what our parents would want uns zu tun. So just thinking that when the parents are a certain connection of the whole entire family. When you have siblings, and especially when they live different parts of the world, so a connection is his parents. But after the parents are not here anymore, are not there anymore, it's easier or harder to keep that connection. However, but I think all of us, we know that what our grandparents and grandparents want uns zu tun is to adarabba, not only to take the kasha that we've had till now, but to strengthen even more. And do so. My father was telling me last night. He said that my grandmother was a very samech b'chalkai. That even though she was rich when she was in Europe, but when she came to America, when she came to Israel, she wasn't so rich, and she never resented it. And she always was so happy. She was always a very simchatik person. And my father mentioned two stories that he felt that was maybe a understanding of why. One that my uncle just mentioned, she was standing in the line, and she had to let go of her brother. And there's another story that she was in line of everyone being sent to the gas chambers, and she was up to her turn. And the Nazi Malch Shemam looked at a paper. He said, "We met our quota." And she saw the Malach Mavis eye to eye, and Baruch Hashem, she was nitzel. And you felt that her appreciation for life came from there. And she was always samech b'chalkai, because as much as she was alive, she was able to continue on. That was enough for her. She was samech b'chalkai. That also gave her that tremendous emunah. I don't think my grandmother knew there was a sefer kol chav zalvavis. I don't think she knew Shari Blech. I think there's many people who are more versed than her in this area. But her emunah and her bitachon, her in Hashem, was unbelievable. My father told me her two most frequent used words was Baruch Hashem. And when she said Baruch Hashem, it wasn't like many of us that we say like and da. It was really, it was a heartfelt. And her davening, her benching was always so heartfelt. And when she would bench, every time we would call her, she would always give lengthy brachas to all of us. And it was always with a tremendous heartfelt. My brother mentioned that we all call her Shabbos, and I've been calling her Friday for the last few years. I've been calling her Friday morning right after Shachris in the morning. And my cousin Shana was in Eretz Yisrael for a while, so because she lived in Eretz Yisrael, so she also called early. So I used to always call right after her phone call. And my grandma said, "Yeah, I just spoke to Shana, and she's working on this, and I have to say another kapil film for her. Have daven that she's matzliach in her tests." She was always daven for any small thing, but something that was very made a big impact on me about a year and a half ago, when my son David, he was being rolled to the operating table for his toe, his one toe and two taps to be cut off. So there was a tremendous Cyrus, Rachem Shemaim, and he was nitzel, Baruch Hashem, he's running around. And I sent a text to all my family members and close friends to tell them the good news. And all the while I realized that my grandmother doesn't have a cell phone, she doesn't get texts. And I called her up, and I said, "Hello." She heard my voice, she says, "Michele." She said, "How's Davidl?" She said, I opened my Tilm this morning, and I just couldn't stop. Who was the one, which the mice were Ma'ori Rachaman. I'm sure she's going to continue to Ma'ori Rachaman. Bil Mavis Netzach, Moch Hashem is the Koponim.
This past Motzei Shabbos, I visited my family in the dining room. We're all together in the dining room with some extended family. I found myself being pulled to my basement to learn Torah. I like to say that would be a typical Motzei Shabbos, but in this past Motzei Shabbos in particular, I found myself pulled to go for some limud Torah in the basement, and it happened to be that the sugya that I was learning had a connection to Vayigash, a medrash where Rashi quotes about honoring grandparents, and how, although it may not be the same requirement to honor a parent, but there's also an obligation to honor a grandparent. It's only when I woke up the next morning to this news that I realized that those hours that I had left to the basement to go learn, I was learning with my grandmother, and those will be hours that I will be cherishing the rest of my life. This week's parsha is Vayechi. We know it's a somewhat ironic title because it's called Yaakov lived, and we know this is the parsha when Yaakov is nifter. And the same question could be asked about Chaye Sarah. It's somewhat of an ironic title, and the message is clear: is that when someone is nifter, someone passes away, it's not important to just be sad continuously, only thinking about the negative of how this person is gone, but to reflect on the life that they lived and the Vayechi, that they lived such a long life, and all the positive things of this person's life. And so it's important to that we're all here today and sharing all the positive things that we feel connected to. I'll just go through a couple that stood out to me. One in particular, that when I think of Babi Shari, I think of her as a giver. She was always, even when I was younger, I would come to Cleveland for Pesach, and after, she always packed me up rugelach for, always make sure there was enough for all the grandkids, and for for my family and for Shayna. And when she got older and she started coming to us for Pesach, she was always making sure that she was helping us around the house with something. If she wasn't being utilized, she would make a point to be like, I can have to just sit here, I can do something. And it hurt her to not be helping, because that was just so internal to her, that being a giver was so just something that she identified with, to the point that if she wasn't helping, it bothered her. And it's so clear to me, looking at her children, that she really passed on this notion of giving as well, seeing the way that her children look after her and cared for her. It's clear that they also have this same trait of being a giver. And another thing that stands out to me, which is clear based on everyone described how she was in the Holocaust, is her emunah. There's so many people who could have gone through the things that she went through and not remained from. I don't know what I would have done if I would have been through all the things that she had to go through. And the fact that she went through all those things and she still remained from, and she always had emunah on Kadosh Baruch Hu, is something that inspires me, and I know inspires the rest of my family to keep going and to always have emunah on Hashem no matter what happens to us. Just want to conclude with a source of nechama for me, the one thing that's been able to comfort me through these days, and hopefully it'll help everyone else who needs some comfort, is just the image of seeing Babi Shari in Shemayim giving a nice big hug to Zaidi with the biggest smile on her face, a bigger smile than we've seen in years. And I know that she's looking down at us.
Everyone, please rise. El Malei Rachamim, Sheichem B'Ameroimim, Hametzei Menucha Nechayna, Al Kanfei HaShechina, B'Mahalais Kedaishim Etayrim, Kezayar Ki Amazirim, Es Nishmas Charna Bas Moshe Alexander, Shochal Elama, Bavor Shebnei Mishpachta Yitein Tzedaka Baraskaras Nishmasa, Began Eden Tehei Menuchasa, Lachein Baal Rachamim Yastireha B'Seiser Kanafav Li'olamim V'Yitzrar B'Tzor HaChaim Es Nishmasa Adinayo Nachalasa V'Sanuach B'Shalayim HaMishkava V'Noymar Amen.
The Levaya is going to go to, the Kvura is going to be at Ridge Road, Zichron Chaim, Chalka. Mincha Ma'ariv will be tonight on Sittingbourne in where Mrs. Blech's house was, at 5:05, Mincha Ma'ariv. It's, what's the number on Sittingbourne? 24460 Sittingbourne, and Shiva Nichum Avelim should be done before 10 p.m. throughout the week.